My name is Kestra, I am 28 years old, and I just discovered that my entire family has been lying to me for over 2 decades. What started as a simple dinner request from my sister Melody turned into the most devastating betrayal I could never have imagined. She demanded $150,000 from my savings account, claiming it was rightfully hers because of some family secret I was never told about. When I refused, she revealed a truth so shocking that it shattered everything I believed about my identity, my parents, and the blood that supposedly bound us together. That revelation did not just change my relationship with my family forever, it destroyed it completely, forcing me to question every memory, every moment of love I thought we shared, and ultimately leading me to make the most drastic decision of my life. Hey everyone, before we dive into this absolutely wild family drama that literally turned my world upside down, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, smash that like button if you are ready for some serious tea, and do not forget to subscribe because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you are going to want to stick around for this one because what my family did to me will make your jaw drop to the floor. The whole nightmare began on a Tuesday evening in March when Melody called me, her voice unusually sweet and syrupy in a way that immediately put me on edge. My older sister had never been one for pleasantries, especially not with me. Growing up, she had always treated me like an inconvenience, the annoying little sister who somehow got more attention despite being younger. But that night, she was practically purring through the phone. "Kestra, honey, I was wondering if we could have dinner this weekend? Just the two of us, maybe at that fancy steakhouse downtown?" Her tone was so artificially warm that it made my skin crawl. Melody never suggested sister bonding time, and she definitely never offered to pay for expensive restaurants. I should have trusted my instincts and declined, but curiosity got the better of me. We had not spent quality time together in months, and despite our complicated relationship, part of me still hoped we could somehow bridge the gap that had always existed between us. I agreed to meet her that Saturday at 7. The restaurant she chose was ridiculously upscale, the kind of place where appetizers cost more than most people spend on groceries for a week. Melody was already seated when I arrived, wearing a designer dress I knew cost more than my monthly rent and jewelry that sparkled under the dim lighting. She stood up to hug me, another red flag since we typically just exchanged awkward waves. For the first hour, everything seemed surprisingly normal. We talked about work, her recent promotion at the marketing firm, my job as a graphic designer at a small but growing agency. She asked about my apartment, complimented my recent haircut, even laughed at my jokes. I started to relax, thinking maybe she had finally decided to make an effort with our relationship. Then came dessert, and with it, the real reason for this elaborate charade. "So, Kestra," Melody said, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth as she fixed me with an intense stare. "I need to talk to you about something important. Something about our family." The way she said our family made something cold settle in my stomach. There was an emphasis there, a weight that felt ominous. "What about our family?" I asked, setting down my own fork. Melody took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what came next. "I know about your savings account. The one with $150,000 in it." My blood ran cold. That money was supposed to be secret, known only to me and my financial advisor. I had been saving religiously since college, living frugally, investing wisely, and working extra freelance projects to build that nest egg. It was my security blanket, my down payment for a house, my emergency fund rolled into one. How could she possibly know about it? "I do not know what you are talking about," I lied, but my voice came out shaky and unconvincing. Melody smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. It was predatory, like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Do not lie to me, Kestra. I know exactly how much you have, where you bank, and how you accumulated it. What I also know is something you clearly do not." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than if she had been shouting. "That money? It is not really yours. It never was. What are you talking about? Of course it is mine. I worked for every penny of it. Did you, though? Melody's smile widened. Tell me, Kestra, have you ever wondered why Mom and Dad always seemed to have a little extra money lying around when you needed it? Why they could always afford to help you with college expenses, even when Dad got laid off? Why they never asked you to contribute to household expenses when you lived at home after graduation? I stared at her, my mind racing. Those things had seemed like normal parental support at the time, but now that she mentioned it, there had been some inconsistencies. Times when my parents claimed to be struggling financially, yet somehow always managed to help me out when I needed it. They were helping me because they are my parents, I said weakly. Wrong, Melody said, her voice now completely devoid of warmth. They were helping you because they owed you. Because of what they did when you were a baby. What we all did. My hand started trembling. What are you talking about? Melody reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through it until she found what she was looking for. She turned the screen toward me, showing a bank statement. Not mine, hers. The account balance showed negative $15,000. I am in serious debt, Kestra. Credit cards, student loans, a mortgage I cannot afford. I need money, and I need it now. The thing is, I know where to get it. She put the phone away and leaned back in her chair. You see, that $150,000 you think you saved? A good chunk of it came from money that should have been mine from the beginning. You are not making any sense. Oh, but I am. You just do not know the whole story yet. Melody signaled for the check. Here's what is going to happen. You are going to transfer $150,000 to my account by the end of this week. If you do not, I am going to tell you something about your precious perfect family that will destroy everything you think you know about yourself. I felt like I was drowning. You cannot just demand my money based on some vague threats. Can I not? Melody stood up, throwing her napkin on the table. Fine. You want to know the truth? Here it is, little sister. You are adopted. Mom and Dad are not your biological parents. But here is the really fun part, I am your biological sister. Our real parents died in a car accident when you were 6 months old, and instead of keeping us together, they split us up. I went to foster care and aged out of the system with nothing. You got the nice family, the stable home, the college fund, the love and support. Everything that should have been shared between us. The restaurant spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what she had just said. That is not possible. You are lying. Am I? Think about it, Kestra. Have you ever seen your birth certificate? Have you ever wondered why you look nothing like Mom and Dad? Why you have completely different interests, different talents, different everything? Melody grabbed her purse and stood up. I have documentation. Birth certificates, court records, the whole paper trail. And now, I want what is fair. Half of everything you got that should have been ours. She leaned down one more time, her voice a venomous whisper. You have until Friday to transfer the money. If you do not, I go public with everything. I will tell the whole family what selfish liars our parents are, how they chose their precious adopted daughter over their biological granddaughter. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are. With that, she walked away, leaving me sitting alone with the check and the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. I sat in that restaurant for another hour after Melody left, staring at the white tablecloth while my world crumbled around me. The waiter kept refilling my water glass and shooting me concerned glances, probably wondering if I was having some kind of breakdown. Which, to be fair, I was. My first instinct was to call my parents immediately and demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way Melody had delivered the news with such calculated cruelty, or maybe it was the small voice in the back of my head that had always wondered why I felt so different from the rest of my family. Either way, I knew I needed to think this through before I did anything rash. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I probably should not have been behind the wheel. Once I was safely in my apartment, I did what I always did when I needed to process something overwhelming. I made a list. It was a habit I had developed in college, writing down facts and questions to organize my thoughts when everything felt chaotic. The facts, as I knew them: Melody claimed I was adopted. She claimed we were biological sisters. She wanted $150,000 from my savings. She had threatened to expose some family secret if I did not comply. She had somehow known about my private financial information. The questions were harder: was any of what she said true? If it was true, why had my parents never told me? How long had Melody known? How had she found out about my savings account? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? I spent the rest of the weekend in research mode. I started by looking through every document I had in my apartment. Birth certificate, social security card, passport, school records. For the first time in my life, I really examined my birth certificate. The hospital listed was St. Mary's downtown, which seemed normal enough. My parents were listed as Jennifer and Robert Martinez. But now that I was looking closely, something about the paper itself seemed off. The font looked slightly different from other official documents I had, and there was a small discrepancy in the state seal that I had never noticed before. I called St. Mary's on Monday morning, pretending to need records for a medical procedure. After being transferred 3 times, I finally spoke to someone in records who confirmed that they had no record of my birth at their facility on the date listed on my certificate. When I pressed for more information, they suggested I contact the Department of Vital Statistics. That phone call was even more revealing. After providing my information and waiting on hold for 20 minutes, the clerk came back with confusion in her voice. "Ma'am, I show 2 different records under your name and birth date. One shows you were born at St. Mary's to Jennifer and Robert Martinez, but there's another record showing an amended birth certificate from when you were approximately 8 months old. The original shows different parents entirely." My stomach dropped. What does the original show? I cannot give you specific details over the phone, but if you come in person with proper identification, I can provide you with copies of both documents. I took a sick day and drove to the Department of Vital Statistics first thing Tuesday morning. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, handed me 2 birth certificates after verifying my identity. The first one, the amended version that matched what I had at home, showed my parents as Jennifer and Robert Martinez. The second one, the original, showed my biological parents as David and Sarah Chen. The same last name as Melody's married name, which I had always assumed came from her husband. But now I remembered, she had gone back to her maiden name after her divorce 2 years ago. She had never told me what her original last name was. "Is there any other information available about the amendment?" I asked the clerk. She consulted her computer again. "I can tell you that the amendment was filed as part of a legal adoption process. The original parents were deceased at the time of the adoption. There should be court records if you want more details, but those would be through the family court system." I left the Vital Statistics office with copies of both birth certificates and a sick feeling in my stomach. Everything Melody had said was starting to check out, which meant I needed to decide what to do with this information. My next stop was the family courthouse, where I spent another 3 hours navigating bureaucracy and filling out forms. By late afternoon, I had copies of the adoption records. The documents painted a devastating picture. David and Sarah Chen had died in a car accident when I was 6 months old. They had 2 children, me and my sister Melody, who was 4 years older. The records showed that Melody had initially been placed with our maternal grandmother, but when the grandmother died 8 months later, Melody entered the foster care system. Meanwhile, I had been quickly adopted by Jennifer and Robert Martinez through a private agency. The most damning part of the records was a section detailing the prospective adoptive families. The Martinez family had specifically requested a single-child adoption, not siblings. They had known about Melody but had chosen not to adopt both of us. As I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, staring at these documents that completely rewrote my life story, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock and confusion were crystallizing into something harder and more focused. Anger. Not just at Melody for the way she had blindsided me, but at my parents for lying to me for 28 years. At the adoption agency for separating siblings. At a system that had given me a comfortable life while my biological sister struggled through foster care. But underneath the anger was something else, a cold, calculating clarity that surprised me. Melody thought she could blackmail me into giving her money by threatening to expose the truth. What she had not counted on was that I might find out the truth on my own and decide what to do with it. I drove home and spent the evening reading every document again, taking notes, and forming a plan. If Melody wanted to play games with family secrets and money, then we would play games. But we would play by my rules, not hers. The next morning, I called my financial advisor and asked him to prepare a detailed breakdown of my savings and investments. I also called a lawyer who specialized in family law and scheduled a consultation for Friday afternoon, the same day Melody had given me as her deadline. By Wednesday evening, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was not going to transfer $150,000 to Melody's account. I was not going to let her blackmail me into funding her poor financial decisions. Instead, I was going to take control of this situation in a way she would never see coming. I texted Melody, "We need to talk." Saturday dinner, same restaurant. "I have some things to tell you about our family situation that I think you will find very interesting." Her response came back within minutes. "Does this mean you are ready to make the transfer?" I smiled as I typed back, "Come to dinner and find out." The 3 days between my text exchange with Melody and our Saturday dinner meeting felt like the longest 72 hours of my life. But I did not waste a single moment of that time. If my sister thought she could manipulate me with partial truths and threats, she was about to learn that too could play the research and revelation game. My first priority was gathering allies, and I knew exactly where to start. Thursday morning, I called my best friend from college, Zara, who now worked as an investigative journalist for a major newspaper. If anyone could help me dig deeper into this family situation, it would be her. "Kestra, what the hell is going on?" Zara asked when I called her at work. "You sound like someone just told you the world is ending." "Close," I said, and proceeded to give her the entire story, Melody's blackmail attempt, the adoption revelations, everything I had discovered in the past few days. Zara listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her since she normally asked a million questions. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment. "Jesus, Kestra. That is some heavy stuff. But here's what I do not understand, why is your sister coming after you now? Why not years ago when she first found out about the adoption?" It was a good question, and one I had been puzzling over myself. I think something triggered this. Maybe she only recently found out about my savings account, or maybe her financial situation got desperate enough that she decided to take action. Or maybe, Zara said slowly, there is more to this story than either of you knows. Look, I have some contacts who specialize in adoption cases and foster care records. Give me until tomorrow and let me see what I can dig up about your biological parents and what happened to your sister after they died. You would do that for me? Are you kidding? This is exactly the kind of story I live for. Plus, you are my friend and someone is trying to screw you over. Of course I am going to help. While Zara worked her investigative magic, I focused on the financial side of things. My consultation with the family law attorney on Friday afternoon was enlightening in ways I had not expected. Margaret Hendricks was a sharp woman in her 50s who listened to my story with the kind of focused attention that made me feel like she was already 3 steps ahead of me. "Here is the thing about adult adoption cases and inheritance," she said after I finished explaining the situation. Your sister has no legal claim to money you earned and saved as an adult, regardless of your biological relationship. The adoption was legal and final. Your adoptive parents had no obligation to adopt both children, and any inheritance or support they provided to you was entirely at their discretion. So Melody cannot actually force me to give her money? Not legally, no. But that does not mean she cannot make your life extremely unpleasant if she follows through on her threats to expose your adoption. The question is, what do you want to accomplish here? Do you want to simply protect yourself from her demands, or do you want to take a more proactive approach? I had been thinking about this exact question for days. I want to understand why this is happening now. And I want to make sure she cannot keep threatening me or my family with this information. Margaret nodded approvingly. Smart. In that case, I would recommend we do some investigating of our own before you meet with her again. I have a private investigator I work with regularly who specializes in family cases. For a modest fee, he could provide us with a complete picture of your sister's current situation, financial, legal, personal. Knowledge is power in situations like this. I agreed to hire the investigator, and Margaret promised to have preliminary information by Saturday morning. As I left her office, I felt more in control than I had since this whole nightmare began. Melody thought she was the only one who could reveal shocking truths, but she was about to find out how wrong she was. Zara called me Friday evening with her own bombshell discoveries. Kestra, you need to sit down for this. I found out some things about your sister that are going to blow your mind. I am already sitting, I said, curled up on my couch with a glass of wine. Hit me with it. First of all, Melody did not age out of foster care with nothing like she told you. According to the records my contact found, she was actually adopted when she was 12 by a family named the Williamses. They provided for her education, and she even went to a private college on their dime. She was not some struggling foster kid, she had a stable family for 6 years before she turned 18. My mouth fell open. She lied to me about that? It gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. The Williamses tried to maintain a relationship with her after she became an adult, but she cut them off completely about 5 years ago. My contact thinks it was over money. Specifically, they would not co-sign a loan for her to buy a house that was way outside her budget. So she has a pattern of demanding money from family members. Exactly. But here is the really interesting part. About 6 months ago, she hired a private investigator to look into her biological family. That is how she found out about you and your savings account. She specifically requested financial information about you. I felt sick to my stomach. She has been planning this for months. It looks that way. But wait, there is more. My contact also found out that she has been posting about this situation on social media and some online forums, painting herself as the victim of an unfair adoption system. She has been building a narrative that she was wrongfully separated from her wealthy sister and deserves compensation. She has been talking about this publicly? Not using your real name, but yes. She has been sharing her version of events and getting sympathy from strangers online. Some of them have even been encouraging her to take legal action against you or your parents. When Zara finished telling me everything she had discovered, I felt like I was seeing the whole situation from a completely different angle. This was not a desperate sister reaching out for help, this was a calculated manipulation by someone with a history of trying to extract money from family members. Saturday morning, Margaret's private investigator delivered his report, and it confirmed everything Zara had found while adding even more disturbing details. Melody was not just in debt, she was in serious legal trouble. She had defaulted on multiple credit cards, been served with eviction notices, and was facing a lawsuit from her former employer for allegedly stealing client funds. The $150,000 she was demanding from me was not for general debt relief, it was to keep her out of prison. Armed with all this information, I felt ready to face Melody that evening. But first, I had one more call to make. Mom? I said when my adoptive mother answered the phone. I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. There was a pause. What is it, honey? You sound upset. Did you know I had a biological sister when you adopted me? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and sad. How did you find out? That is a long story. But Mom, I need you to know that I am not angry with you about the adoption. What I am angry about is that you never told me the truth. We are going to need to have a serious conversation about this soon, but right now, I need to handle something with Melody first. Oh God, my mother whispered. She contacted you, did not she? We have been so afraid this day would come. You knew she might try to contact me? We hired lawyers to make sure the adoption was completely sealed, but we always knew there was a possibility. Kestra, whatever she has told you, please remember that we love you and we did what we thought was best at the time. I know you did, Mom. And like I said, we will talk about all of this soon. But right now, I need you to trust me to handle Melody my own way. After I hung up, I sat quietly for a few minutes, processing everything that had happened in the past week. Then I got dressed for dinner, tucked copies of all the documents I had gathered into my purse, and headed out to meet my biological sister for what I knew would be the most important conversation of both our lives. The game was about to begin, and this time I was holding all the cards. Melody was already at the same table when I arrived at the restaurant, and I could tell immediately that she thought she had won. She was practically glowing with confidence, wearing another expensive outfit and checking her phone constantly, probably refreshing her banking app to see if the money had appeared yet. Kestra, she called out as I approached, her voice sickeningly sweet again. I was starting to think you might not show up. I guess you came to your senses about our little arrangement. I sat down across from her, placing my purse carefully beside my chair. Inside were copies of every document I had gathered over the past week, along with printouts of her social media posts and forum discussions about our situation. Oh, I definitely came to my senses. Just not in the way you think. Her smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? I mean that I spent this week doing exactly what you did 6 months ago. Hiring investigators and digging into family history. The difference is, I was more thorough. I signaled the waiter and ordered a glass of wine, taking my time to let the tension build. Tell me, Melody, do the Williamses know you are trying to extort money from your biological sister? The color drained from her face. I do not know what you are talking about. Really? Because I have documentation showing that David and Linda Williams adopted you when you were 12, paid for your private school education, sent you to college, and tried to maintain a relationship with you until you cut them off 5 years ago when they would not co-sign a loan for you. I pulled out the first set of documents and placed them on the table. You lied to me about aging out of foster care with nothing. You had a family, Melody. A family that loved you and supported you, just like I did. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. That is different. They were not my real family. Neither are the Martinezes, but that did not stop them from raising me with love and support. The difference is, I did not abandon my adoptive family when they could not give me everything I wanted. Melody's mask was starting to slip. The sweet, manipulative sister act was giving way to something uglier underneath. You do not understand what it was like. You got the perfect life handed to you while I was bounced around from home to home. For less than 6 years, I corrected. And then you got a perfect life too. You just threw it away. I pulled out the next set of documents. Speaking of throwing things away, how is that lawsuit from Brennan Marketing going? The one where they are accusing you of embezzling client funds? Now she looked genuinely panicked. How do you know about that? The same way you found out about my savings account. Private investigators are very thorough when you pay them properly. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to match the threatening whisper she had used on me the week before. Here is what I know, Melody. You are not just in debt, you are facing criminal charges. You need $150,000 not to pay off credit cards, but to pay back the money you stole before your former employer presses charges. You thought you could manipulate me into funding your legal defense by playing the abandoned sister card. Kestra, please, you do not understand. Oh, but I do understand. I understand that you have been planning this for months. I understand that you hired a private investigator specifically to find out about my finances. I understand that you have been posting about our situation on social media, trying to build sympathy for yourself while painting me as the privileged sister who owes you something. I placed printouts of her forum posts on the table. I also understand that several people in these online discussions have been advising you to take legal action against me and my parents. Melody stared at the printouts, her composure completely gone now. You cannot prove any of this means anything. Actually, I can. Because unlike you, I consulted with actual lawyers before making any moves. Want to know what they told me? I did not wait for her to answer. They told me that you have no legal claim to any money I earned as an adult. They told me that threatening to expose private family information in exchange for money could be considered extortion. They also told me that if I wanted to, I could have you arrested tonight. You would not do that. We are sisters. Are we? I asked, genuinely curious. Because sisters do not usually try to blackmail each other. Sisters do not lie about their backgrounds to manipulate emotions. Sisters do not spend months planning elaborate schemes to steal from each other. I pulled out the final document, a restraining order application that my lawyer had prepared. But you are right about one thing. I am not going to have you arrested tonight. Relief flooded her face, but it was premature. Instead, I am going to give you a choice. You can take the deal I am about to offer you, or you can take your chances with the criminal justice system. I placed the restraining order paperwork on top of the other documents. Here is my offer. I will give you exactly $10,000, enough to hire a decent criminal defense attorney for your embezzlement case. In exchange, you will sign an agreement stating that you will never contact me, my parents, or anyone else in my adoptive family again. You will also remove all posts about our situation from social media and agree to never discuss our family business publicly again. 10,000? I need 150,000. No, you want 150,000. You need about 20,000 to make restitution and avoid jail time, according to my research. The other 130,000 was going to be your profit for successfully manipulating me. I sat back in my chair. $10,000, Melody. Take it or leave it. And if I do not take it? Then I walk away from this table, go straight to the police, and file charges for attempted extortion. I also send copies of all my research to Brennan Marketing, the Williamses, and anyone else who might be interested in your pattern of trying to manipulate family members for money. I checked my watch. You have 5 minutes to decide. The next 4 minutes were the longest of my life. Melody sat there staring at the documents, her face cycling through anger, desperation, and finally, defeated acceptance. With 30 seconds left on my deadline, she looked up at me with hatred in her eyes. Fine. I will take your deal. Smart choice. I pulled out the prepared agreement and a pen. Sign here, and I will transfer the money tonight. As she signed her name with shaking hands, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This was not how I had ever imagined meeting my biological sister would go, but it was definitely how it needed to end. There is one more thing, I said as I collected the signed agreement. If you ever contact me again, if you ever try to reach out to my family, if you ever post about this situation online or tell this story to anyone, I will release everything I found about you to the media. My friend Zara is a journalist, and she would love to write a story about adoption reunion scams. Melody stood up without another word and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me alone with the check and the overwhelming relief of someone who had just won a battle they never wanted to fight. The transfer of $10,000 to Melody's account took exactly 3 minutes on my banking app, but the emotional aftermath of our confrontation lasted for weeks. I sat in my car outside the restaurant for nearly an hour after she left, trying to process what had just happened. I had won, but it did not feel like a victory. It felt like I had just surgically removed a cancerous part of my family tree. The drive home was surreal. Every song on the radio seemed to be about family, betrayal, or starting over. I found myself laughing at the cosmic irony of it all. Here I was, driving away from the most dramatic confrontation of my life while some pop song played about blood being thicker than water. Apparently, nobody had told the songwriter that sometimes blood is just a biological accident. When I got home, I did something I had been avoiding all week. I called my parents and asked them to come over immediately. It was time to have the conversation we should have had 28 years ago. They arrived within an hour, looking exactly like people who had been dreading this moment for decades. My mother's eyes were red from crying, and my father kept clearing his throat nervously, the way he did when he had something difficult to say. We sat in my living room, the three of us arranged in a triangle of uncomfortable silence until I finally spoke. "I know everything," I said simply. "I know about the adoption, about Melody, about the choice you made to take only me. What I do not know is why you never told me the truth." My mother broke down immediately. "We were so young, Kestra. We were 26 and 28, and we had been trying to have children for 3 years with no success. When the adoption agency told us about you, this beautiful baby who needed a home, it felt like a miracle." "What about Melody?" My father answered this time, his voice heavy with guilt. "They told us she was 4 years old, had been in foster care for over a year, and had behavioral issues from the trauma of losing her parents. The social worker said she would be difficult to place and suggested that taking both children might be too much for first-time parents. So you just chose me instead of her?" "It was not that simple," my mother said, reaching for tissues. "We asked about keeping the sisters together, but the agency said Melody was already in a potential placement with another family. They told us she would probably be adopted soon anyway, and that it might actually be better for both of you to have fresh starts with different families." The rational part of my brain understood their reasoning. They were young, inexperienced, and following the advice of professionals who were supposed to know what was best. But emotionally, I felt sick thinking about 4-year-old Melody being told her baby sister was going to a different family. "When did you find out she had not been adopted by another family?" I asked. My parents exchanged a look that told me everything. "About 6 months after we brought you home," my father admitted. "The Williamses did eventually adopt her, but there was a gap where she was back in foster care. We thought about reaching out then, but our lawyer advised against it. He said it could complicate both adoptions and might not be in either child's best interest." "And after that?" "We hired a private investigator to check on her periodically," my mother said quietly. "We knew when she was adopted, when she graduated high school, when she went to college. We even knew when she got married and divorced. We always hoped she was happy and building a good life for herself." "Did you know she found out about me?" "Not until recently. About 3 months ago, we got a call from someone claiming to be conducting a medical history survey for adopted children. They asked questions that were too specific, too targeted. We suspected someone was looking into your adoption, but we hoped we were being paranoid." The pieces were clicking into place. That was probably Melody's private investigator. "We thought about warning you then," my father said, "but we did not know how to bring up something we should have told you years ago. We kept thinking maybe nothing would come of it, maybe whoever was asking questions would just go away." I understood their reasoning, but it still stung that they had known I might be contacted and had not prepared me for it. "What happens now?" I asked. "That depends on you," my mother said. "We know we made mistakes, both in how we handled the original adoption and in not telling you the truth sooner. We do not expect you to just forgive and forget, but we hope you can understand that everything we did came from a place of love. I do understand that, I said, and I meant it. But I need some time to process all of this. The adoption, Melody's blackmail attempt, everything. I need to figure out how I feel about learning that my entire life story was different from what I thought. Of course, my father said quickly. Whatever you need. We just want you to know that you are our daughter in every way that matters. Biology does not change that. I know, I said, and surprisingly, I did know. Despite everything that had happened, despite feeling betrayed by their secrecy, I never doubted that they loved me. I am not going anywhere, but I need some space to work through this. They left that night with promises to give me time while staying available whenever I was ready to talk more. After they were gone, I poured myself a large glass of wine and called Zara to update her on how the dinner with Melody had gone. Holy shit, Kestra, she said when I finished telling her about the confrontation. You basically played chess while she was playing checkers. I am impressed. I do not feel impressive. I feel exhausted and sad and angry all at the same time. That is normal. You just found out your sister is a sociopath who tried to scam you out of your life savings. Anyone would need time to process that. Former sister, I corrected. I signed that agreement too. As far as I am concerned, Melody Chen is now just a stranger who shares some DNA with me. Good for you. What are you going to do now? I looked around my apartment, at the life I had built with my own hard work and determination, and realized that despite everything that had happened, I was exactly where I needed to be. I think I am going to book a vacation. Somewhere far away where I can think about what I want my life to look like now that I know the truth about everything. That sounds perfect. Where are you thinking? I smiled for the first time in over a week. Actually, I think I am going to buy that one-way ticket I mentioned in my text to Melody. Not because I am running away, but because I am finally free to go anywhere I want without someone trying to manipulate me or control me. I love that for you, Zara said. Where will you go? I have absolutely no idea, I said, and that feels like the most liberating thing in the world. 6 months later, I am writing this from a small cafe in Prague, watching tourists take selfies in front of the astronomical clock while sipping coffee that costs less than $1. The one-way ticket I bought turned into a 6-month journey through Eastern Europe, where I have been working remotely and trying to piece together who I am when I am not defined by family drama or other people's expectations. The morning after my confrontation with Melody, I woke up with the strangest sense of clarity I had ever experienced. For the first time in my adult life, I did not have to wonder about hidden family secrets or worry about someone trying to manipulate me for money. I also did not have to carry the weight of a relationship with someone who saw me as a walking ATM rather than a sister. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. I started planning my trip that same day. I had always talked about traveling through Europe but had never done it because I was too focused on saving money and building security. But security, I realized, was not just about having money in the bank, it was about knowing that the people in your life genuinely cared about you rather than what you could provide for them. The last 6 months have taught me more about myself than the previous 28 years combined. I learned that I am braver than I thought when I navigated the Prague metro system despite speaking exactly zero Czech. I learned that I am more adaptable than I realized when I figured out how to work from internet cafes and hostel lobbies across 3 countries. Most importantly, I learned that family is not just about shared DNA or legal documents, it is about the people who show up for you when things get difficult. Zara has been texting me almost daily with updates from home, including the aftermath of my confrontation with Melody. Apparently, my biological sister took the $10,000 and hired a lawyer who managed to negotiate a plea deal for her embezzlement case. She ended up with 2 years of probation and community service, plus full restitution to her former employer. According to Zara's sources, She has been working double shifts at a retail job to pay off her legal fees and has not posted anything on social media about our family situation since signing my agreement. My adoptive parents and I have been having weekly video calls that have slowly rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty rather than secrets. They finally told me everything about the adoption process, including details they had been too ashamed to share before. It turns out they had actually inquired about adopting both Melody and me initially, but the adoption agency discouraged it because they were concerned about first-time parents taking on two children with trauma histories. The social worker told us that siblings from traumatic backgrounds often do better when separated, my mother explained during one of our calls. She said that staying together can sometimes reinforce the trauma and prevent healing. We believed we were doing what was best for both of you. I still struggle with their decisions sometimes, but I understand it better now. They were young people trying to make an impossible choice based on limited information and professional advice that may have been wrong. What matters more is that they have spent the past 6 months being completely transparent with me about everything, including their regrets and fears. The relationship that has surprised me the most, though, is the one I have developed with the Williamses, Melody's adoptive parents. 3 months into my trip, I received a Facebook message from Linda Williams asking if I would be willing to talk with them about Melody and our shared history. After some hesitation, I agreed to a video call that ended up lasting 3 hours. They told me about their experience raising Melody, including the challenges and the moments of genuine happiness. They also shared their perspective on her recent legal troubles and their attempts to maintain a relationship with her despite her cutting them off financially. We love Melody, Linda said, but we also recognize that she has patterns of behavior that are destructive to herself and others. We hoped that maybe connecting with her biological family might help her, but it sounds like she approached that opportunity in the worst possible way. Through our conversations, I learned that David and Linda Williams are genuinely good people who did their best to raise a troubled child. They offered me something Melody never could: a connection to my biological heritage without drama or manipulation. They shared photos of our biological parents, told me stories about the family history they had researched when they adopted Melody, and even invited me to visit them when I returned to the States. "You are part of our family story now," David told me. "Not because of biology, but because you are connected to someone we love, and because you handled a difficult situation with more grace than we have seen from many people half your age." That conversation made me realize that family is not about who shares your blood or who raised you from birth. Family is about the people who choose to love you consistently, who support your growth rather than trying to hold you back, and who celebrate your successes rather than resenting them. As my time in Europe draws to a close, I find myself excited to go home for the first time since this whole situation began. I am returning to a life where I know exactly who I am and who belongs in my inner circle. My adoptive parents, Zara, the Williamses, and a few other close friends who have proven themselves over the years, that is my chosen family, and they are more valuable than any amount of money Melody could have demanded. I am also returning with a new perspective on justice and karma. Melody wanted me to believe that the universe owed her something because of circumstances beyond anyone's control. But real justice is not about getting what you think you deserve. It is about taking responsibility for your own choices and their consequences. Melody chose to lie, manipulate, and steal rather than build genuine relationships or work honestly for what she wanted. The consequences of those choices caught up with her regardless of what I did or did not give her. The most important lesson I have learned is that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be manipulated. By standing up to Melody's threats and taking control of the situation, I did not just protect my savings account, I protected my right to define my own relationships and boundaries. That is worth more than any amount of money. I have been thinking a lot about family karma and justice lately, and I want to hear from all of you who have been following this story. Have you ever had to deal with a family member who tried to manipulate you using guilt, secrets, or financial pressure? How did you handle it, and what did you learn about yourself in the process? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help me feel less alone in navigating these complicated family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life drama and life lessons. Share it with anyone who might be dealing with similar family manipulation. Sometimes knowing you are not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I hope my experience helps you trust your instincts when someone tries to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself and your hard-earned security. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries, even with family. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that you deserve relationships built on genuine love, not manipulation or obligation.